All right, ladies and gentlemen, so we're going to try to make a video here. So I didn't sleep very well last night, and I wake up this morning to whatever the hell this is. This is soda pop in here, obviously. And by wake up this morning, I mean like, noon or 1 p.m. or something stupid like that. Didn't sleep very well last night. So I was watching this, and it's basically Soda Poppin talking about, doing a TBC dueling tournament, Tipsout, it contacted him, blah, 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 blah. And I am unironically, at this point, probably the number one best TBC duelist and the number one classic World of Warcraft duelist. Although when I say that, it is both the truth and a bold-faced lie at the same time. As anybody on this channel knows, a combination of being in China with connectivity issues, lag, and far more importantly is just I'm not super good at pushing the buttons on Paladin compared to a lot of other Paladin players. So what happens is the sheer act of me making a guide and telling players how to play their Paladin and how to be a better duelist as a Paladin, the sheer act of me sharing my knowledge of how a Paladin is the number one duelist in both Classic World of Warcraft and in TBC, suddenly causes me to not have the right to say that I'm the number one duelist anymore. It's going to be some other Paladin who's better at pushing the buttons, but they're using my ideas and my concepts, right? So I thought this was kind of an interesting video to watch. I'm going to let Soda Poppin talk here so you can see my reaction to it. At first, I'm all like, this sounds like a really good idea, even though TBC dueling is basically terrible. I have a small list here, for example, of the red box is issues with actually dueling, running a dueling tournament. Resist gear is a really big issue. Let's get black. Let's get some red here. Resistance gear is a really big issue. But if you limit the resistance gear, the next thing you know, the rogues are incredibly dominant. So it's like if you don't limit the resist gear, a Holy Shock Paladins are going to dominate. They can basically beat every class in the game. They're one of the only classes that can actually put rogues in the dirt consistently if they know what the hell they're doing. But if you limit the resist gear, then rogues are just going to run rampant. Then there's the other thing about politics. If you have like high-level grand prizes as opposed to doing a dueling tournament for like clout, there's all kinds of politics and gatekeeping that go around like a high prize pool. And this is in the back of my head. All of this is in the back of the head while I'm hearing Soda talk about this. Okay, so let's just play it for a hot second.
Oh, how do I word this? Tips came to me and said he wants to do another dueling tournament, but this time for TBC. And I'm like, yeah, fuck yeah, let's do it. So maybe we could do it sometime a little before OnlyFans, so we go from the tournament into that. I was like, yeah, sure, that sounds good. Let's do it. And first thing I did, and it'll have like first place prize.
Yeah, Okay, we don't want to hear that just yet. So I'm listening to this video, and what's going through my head within the first 30 seconds of this video is like, tips out, dueling tournament, Soda Poppin hosted. That would be really awesome if it was for clout. If they did like a high-level grand prize, that would be... I'm thinking about all the problems on this list with doing like a TBC dueling tournament because it's going to look like ass, right? Like if you just like... if you did a dueling tournament on the PTR right now, there's a lot of gear, especially resist gear, missing from the roster. That rogues are basically going to run rampant, but if you don't put resist gear... If resist gear is just allowed to do... if you don't put any limitations on the resist gear, then the Holy Shock Paladins are going to kill everything. But then he starts talking about a grand prize, and oh my god. Let me let him finish, and I'll give my exact reaction to this next thing he's about to say.
Prize could be like... And first thing I did, and it'll have like... first place prize could be like... It could be upwards of $250,000, you know?
Ah!
No, God! No, God, please, no! No!
Literally my reaction.
No!
Literally my reaction right
No!
now. Ah!
No!
Oh my oh fuck. Because I was thinking like for clout or something, and I was just like, the moment you have a grand prize that much, with a bunch of streamers involved, what ends up happening is a bunch of like backdoor politicking, what is the other word I want to use here? Gatekeeping. Yeah, a bunch of gatekeeping takes place. So that for some classes, you're going to get, like, you're going to be able to see the top tier PvPers of that class competing in said dueling tournament. But for other classes, you're not going to be able to see the top tier duelingists, or duelists. So, for example, if the tournament was just for clout, you could or could not see the best paladin, the best paladins in the world show up, whether that's me or somebody else, right? But the moment it's like $200,000 grand prize, you're not going to see them show up, right? Like at best, you might see S-Fan show up. Although S-Fan has kind of wised up to the idea of staying the hell out of dueling tournaments at this point. His strengths definitely lie elsewhere. Although Holy Shock Paladin is easy enough to play in TBC that he could probably win the dueling tournament if he just follows a Pally-Time guide. Oh, no. So the moment I heard grand prize $200,000, I hear gatekeeping. I just hear back room politicking, gatekeeping, making special rules, this, So, that sucks. Anyways, our boy goes on to talk about rogues, and thank God for that.
So, with that, I'm like, all right, well, let's take this serious. First thing I did, I went and messaged Mir. I said, hey, what's it like dueling in TBC?
It sucks ass.
Because I need to know, is this tournament possible?
It sucks ass. Rogues are incredibly oppressive, and the only thing that puts rogues consistently in the dirt is Argent Defender Paladin and Holy Shock Paladin. And Holy Shock, it's like rogues beat everything except for Holy Shock Paladin. And then Holy Shock Paladin loses to Fire Mage and Warlock specifically. But that's only on like the Warmain server, where like the private henhouse server, where you don't have access to resist gear. If both sides have access to all the resist gear in the game, the Holy Shock Paladin suddenly shits on Fire Mages and shits on Warlocks, and so they just kind of run over everything. Because the resistance gear is just so oppressive in TBC, and they're the only class in the entire game that can actually consistently put rogues in the dirt. So he's about to talk about how rogues are the big elephant in the room. But if you actually know the hierarchy tier list of dueling in Arena, you'll know that Holy Shock Paladins, if they have access to resist gear, are actually top dog in TBC PvP, with Argent Defender being a very close second. And the primary difference between Holy Shock Paladin and Argent Defender is that Argent Defender Paladin will have like a 70% win rate against a really good rogue. Whereas Holy Shock has like 85% win rate against a really good rogue. They have to be built properly, usually, so we're talking putting enough points into the ret tree that you get the plus 15% movement, because the one thing the Paladin has to do versus the Rogue is they'll hodge stun the Rogue, and then they have to run away from the Rogue in a straight line and put Consecration behind them. They have to run away for long enough that the poisons and shit fall off, then they can heal themselves. If they can do that, and they have that plus 15% movement speed, a Rogue can't do fuck all to them. They just fucking die. But other than that, rogues are incredibly oppressive. He's about to talk about this. And I'm happy we're having this conversation, but, I mean, I gotta add to it, right?
And Mir, I asked him for the God's honest truth, and Mir said, and Mir is one of the best TBC players, period, and he plays a rogue.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, listen.
It sucks ass.
TBC dueling sucks.
Yep.
I can beat every single person, every class, with my hands tied behind my back.
Yeah, except for Paladin. Because
rogues are way too fucking OP. So you're gonna have to figure out a weird like rule set that, truth be told, kind of nerfs rogues a little bit. Or
Paladin.
maybe do a 2v2 tournament.
That would be
Maybe
better.
if you do it like back-to-back 1v1s, because rogues don't have their cooldowns. But Cloak of Shadows is the real menace. And rogues can very easily just cheap shot and re-stealth over and over again, or sap and re-stealth, whatever.
It's actually a combination of Cloak of Shadows and Resist Gear, because Cloak of Shadows can go wrong. But I mean, like, let's say I'm a rogue and I'm fighting a Warlock, and it's like, yeah, I'm just going to sit here in like 300 Shadow Resist Gear with like Cloak of Shadows and shit. What the fuck is the Warlock supposed to do? Like objectively, what the fuck is he supposed to do? And the rogue technically can win versus just about any class without resistance gear. But if he has access to resistance gear, his win rate goes from like 80% to like 95%. Like, it's like literally nothing you can do. So I think there's two elephants in the room. The first one is resistance gear. The second one is rogues. And then the third consideration is a Holy Shock Paladin. Because there's a $250,000 grand prize, you may or may not get paladins who know what the fuck they're doing. So Paladin might not be the might not be represented as the dueling monstrosity that it really is.
And basically get their cooldowns back. So with that, I said, okay, well, to figure out like what kind of rule set and how we should approach this tournament, I need to test the game.
Okay. Well, we'll end the video here, and I'll say my piece on the subject. Or not end the video here. We'll pause it, I guess. No, God, no. All right. So I've been talking about it so far, but we'll go over it in sequence. Okay. So the two best dueling classes in TBC, assuming that every option is on the table, all the resist gear is available, you can do whatever you want, you can take any trinket you want, there's no restrictions, none of that whatsoever. Rogues literally, he's not wrong when he says beats every class with hands tied behind his back. He's 100% correct about that. A rogue will demolish every other class in the entire game, with the exception of a Holy Shock Paladin or an Argent Defender Paladin. Those are the only two fucking things that can go anywhere near a rogue and win. And it's literally just like, do you know how to run, as a paladin, from the paladin perspective, it's literally like, do you know how to run away in straight line and put Consecrate down and then heal yourself, yes or no? If you can do that, you win. If you can't do that, you lose. So what would happen in an unrestricted dueling tournament, okay, is that rogues would kill everything, but then they'd run into Holy Shock Paladins or Argent Defender Paladins, and they would lose pretty hard. Again, 70% win rate versus like 85% win rate for the Paladin. If the Paladin then has access to unrestricted resistance gear, the Paladin is going to go on to shit on every other class in the game like they're a redheaded stepchild. Like, no contest, even in the remotest, not even in mathematical conception. So again, rogues beat every other class except for Holy Shock Paladins and Argent Defender Paladin, and pretty easily. Holy Shock Paladin beats every other class, maintains like a 70% win rate against most of the classes, but there's a lot more skill in your gearing and blah, 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 blah. However, if they have access, the things that beat them are Fire Mage and Warlock. But if you so much as sneeze on resist gear as a paladin, you end up just completely shitting on them. And then you can use resist gear to make the other matchups go from like a 70% win rate to like a 95% win rate. So if you're fighting like, you know, an elemental shaman, you put on nature resist gear, like good fucking luck to him. If you're fighting a Frost Mage and you so much as sneeze at frost resistance gear with like plus healing gear, like, you know, they're going to go and die horribly. What else is there to say? Fire Mage, fire resist gear, they're gone, they're done. Druids, you just kind of like wear spirit gear against a druid. I wish I was joking about that. It's a long mana war fight between you and a good druid, but the paladin tends to win. You just have to be aware that it's not so much a resistance fight against a druid, it's an actual mana war. and the spirit stat is better for your paladin than MP5. You can squeak out a win against most druids with MP5 gear, but you wear the spirit gear and they basically just get shit on. And if you are able to pair spirit gear with some semblance of resistances, so for example, there's like one like violet order or something trinket that gives you like 45 arcane resistance. Arcane resistance is quite plentiful in TBC. Also nature resist. The druid's basically just going to be dotting you up and auto attacking you. It's more of a I would just beat them with a mana war. So the moral of the story is if a Holy Shock Paladin knows what the hell he's doing, he's going to win that tournament. If there are no Holy Shock Paladins that know what the hell they're doing, then a rogue is going to win that tournament. And it's going to be incredibly one-sided and incredibly boring. The Paladin fights are going to look far more interesting than the rogue fights, I'll tell you that fucking much. The other elephant in the room here is what happens if we restrict what happens if we restrict the amount of resistance gear or the number of resistance gear. 1 second here. And the answer is I don't know. So I've been struggling to ascertain just how much pen gear is available to my opponents in TBC. See if I can't get on the PTR here really fast. Wowhead kind of tells me one thing on the subject. It's like, hey, all these pen jewels are unique and really hard to get your hands on. But when I was on the PTR, I thought I saw that there was like a 10 or 13 spell pen jewels that were not unique. So well, we don't want that. We want Blizzard. Battle.net. There we go. So I'm not entirely sure if you can counter the resist gear with, like where would we want to draw the line at resistance gear? So unfortunately, we have to have I can have a conversation about how to nerf rogues if you really want to. The problem with having a conversation about nerfing rogues is that the real elephant in the room is Holy Shock Paladin, who knows how to beat rogues and can find their fucking resist gear. That's the real elephant in the room, in the grand scheme of things. Let me see if I can fly over here before we DC out of this damn place. Oh boy. Okay, yeah, we need to get to the gem vendor. I was going to make a series of videos talking about how to duel every class and beat them as Paladin. That was one thing I was going to do this week. I do believe they're blue jewels of all things. Yeah, so we got 10 spell penetration out. It says Stormy Star of Elune. I don't think these are cut gems, so I'm not entirely convinced I can put multiples of these into my gear at the same time, but we'll give it a go. No. We need to shift right click. There we go. No, that's okay. Spell pen. My keyboard is in the way. That's annoying. Spell pen. Oof. And spell pen. All right, apply. Ooh, okay, so we can get 10 spell pen in here. All right, that's good to know. That's all I need to know on the PTR right now. Let's get the hell out of here before I lose my goddamn mind. Okay, cool. Before it kicks me out and pisses me off, let's just preempt that relationship really fast. Okay, so what you're looking at, let me pull up a calculator here, is if I recall correctly, you can get about 20 spell pen as an enchant on Cloak. You're looking at maybe 110 at most. We'll say 100, but yeah, probably only 100 spell penetration from jewels. And then I do believe mages and a bunch of other classes, they come with like something like 10 spell pen from talents or something like that. You're still only, for relatively cheap, our opponents can get somewhere in the vicinity of, like, we'll say 150 spell penetration for the sake of argument, right? If you limited resistance gear to only 200 in TBC, and they're reducing that by like 150, what this is going to mean is that the paladins are no longer going to be able to beat the fire mages. They're no longer going to be able to beat the warlocks specifically, and then we're back to a rogue winning said dueling tournament. The resist gear is also important for other classes to stand a snowball's chance in hell against like an SL Warlock or against like elemental shamans or against a bunch of classes. So, for example, if you're like a druid trying to take on an SL Warlock and you're not allowed to wear resist gear worth a damn, good fucking luck to you, sir. And the same thing kind of goes for just about every class in the game. However, if we're looking at doing a cap on resistance of 300 in TBC, and our enemies can only minus that by like 150, minus 150 equals... And then I would divide this by 11, I do believe. Yes. No, we'll divide it by 22. That's a more solid number. Then we multiply it by 5, if I recall correctly. You're still looking at people running around with over 1/3 spell damage reduction. Like, that's a 34% spell damage reduction. If you don't know how resistances work in TBC, it's kind of in line with how all the other stats work in TBC. So at level 60... 20 agility on your paladin is like 1% critical strike. At level 70, it's 22 agility is 1% critical strike on your paladin. The resistances work virtually identically to this. So 40 resistance at level 60 is a 10% damage reduction. In TBC, it's a 44 resistance on your character at level 70 is a 10% spell damage reduction. So you can take whatever your resistance is and you can divide it by 22 and then multiply it by 5. Or you can divide that number, okay, that's cool. Or you can divide that number by 11 and multiply it by 2.25 or 2.5. Yeah, there we go. So what this means is that if I have like 220 resistance in TBC, that's a 50% damage reduction. If I have 330 resistance in TBC, that's going to be a 2/3 damage reduction. I would literally take this fuck off. 330 divided by, I would divide it by 11, and then I would multiply that number by 2.5 because each 11 is a 2.5 resistance. Or you can do like, 20 divided by 44 or multiply it by 10, divide it by 22, multiply it by 5. I'm just dividing it by 11 in this case. You can see that at 3, fuck off. We're actually at our resistance cap of 75% at 330 resistance. Resistance gear is insanely easy to get in TBC. Like, okay, so how do I want to explain this? So I'm trying to go through the elephants in the room for a good dueling tournament in TBC, especially if you're doing a grand prize. I think you fix the problem of a good dueling tournament in TBC if you don't have a very large grand prize and it's mostly for clout. Like, if you keep the grand prize down to like 10,000 USD, and you do it more for clout, you'd end up with people would be much less serious about these little like elephants in the room, if that makes any sense. So if I go into the PTR and I mount up, hopefully the internet holds long enough here. It is the weekend here in China, and I go over to this dickhead right here. Okay. And we scroll on over. He's going to have some resist gear. Our boy's got access to a bunch of, like, fire resistance. I think there's also some shadow resist gear that you can get around here somewhere, if I recall correctly. Most of the best resistance gear in the game for a resistance paladin actually comes from quest rewards in, like, Terrakar Forest, or it comes from blacksmithing. Like, this guy's going to make you, hey, make me this blacksmithing item using these moats and stuff like that. Very, very easy to get access to resistance gear in TBC, and it's a wide array of resistance gear. So, classic World of Warcraft actually does a better job of resistance gear than TBC. Because in classic World of Warcraft, you can either have stamina on a piece of gear or you can have resistance on a piece of gear. You're almost never allowed to have both stamina and resistance on a piece of gear in classic World of Warcraft at the same time. Mathematically speaking, for game balancing purposes, this is correct. It is correct to do this. And then TBC basically does the opposite of this and says, hey, I'm going to give you stamina and resistance gear, and it primarily does that for tanking and dungeons and stuff like that. But mathematically, this is a terrible idea. Let me get the hell out of here. Preempt that. That's for damn sure. Mathematically, this is a terrible idea because resistances don't have a diminishing return. If I'm at 220 resistance in TBC, like, you know, literally divide that by 22 equals, multiply that by 5, that's a 55% damage reduction. If I increase this resistance by a mere 110 points after that, we go from a 50% damage reduction to a motherfucking 75% damage reduction, which means we're doing another doubling durability effect against that gear. So in classic World of Warcraft, you might be running around with, like, you know, 3,500 HP, but you'll have like a 75% like shadow damage reduction at like 300 resistance, for example. But in TBC, because the gear has a bunch of stamina on it, you basically lose offensive combat stats. You don't lose like the raw HP. So you can be a paladin very, very easily, a Holy Shock paladin in TBC, running around with 11,000 hit points and like a 75% magic damage reduction. We'll just say 50%. Like even through enemies like armor or magic penetration, you can have like a 75%. My bad, a 50% like magic damage reduction. If there's no restriction on resist gear whatsoever, you can be running around like 400 resistance gear. It would be like, yeah, I'm going to have like 400 resistance on my paladin, and at most you can reduce that by like, you know, 150. If you had an Eye of Moab, you could pop that and reduce it by like another 100, but that takes up a trinket slot. And then I could theoretically also have like a Scarab Brooch trinket from AQ40, which I pop that when you pop your Eye of Moab. The two basically cancel each other out. God damn it, man. Divide that by 22 equals, multiply it by 5. I'm still at like a 57% physical damage reduction. So I can be like an 11,000 hit pointed anything in TBC. 11,000 hit pointed Druid, 11,000 hit pointed a Holy Shock Paladin, 11,000 hit pointed an Elemental Shaman or Enhancement Shaman. And that damage reduction of like 50, what was it? That 57% fire damage reduction is going to be somewhere in the vicinity of like 100 and I want to say like 150% increase to your HP. 100 times 2.5 equals multiplied by what was that, a 57% damage reduction? So I need to go 43.43 equals. Okay, yeah, that means we need to reduce this number a bit. Okay, let's go to 240 multiplied by 0.43. That's right, that's what it is. Okay, cool. So let's go 230, even though, yeah, that's probably going to be perfect. 0.43. Okay, cool. Yeah. So it's close to a 200 and we'll say 33% increase, my bad, a 133% increase to your effective HP. So for the purposes of trying to kill you, you don't have 11,000 hit points on your Holy Shock Paladin anymore. You have whatever the fuck this is. You have 20,300 effective HP on your fucking Paladin against a Frost Mage, a Fire Mage, an Elemental Shaman, a Warlock, because mostly Warlocks use Shadow Resist, and then like Shadow Priest, right? Where the hell is the calculator at? Okay, so that's your standing effective HP. Now, you might be saying to yourself, well, you probably sacrificed a bunch of plus healing. So your Holy Lights, rather than healing you for like, 3,000, they're now only healing you for basically like 2,000. But because of all the resistance gear, those Holy Lights are actually going to be increased in efficiency by the same 130%. So it's like, it's difficult for me to explain for any class that can gain that can heal themselves how much the abundance of resist gear that has really thick stamina on it in TBC kind of just breaks the meta of the game, if that makes any sense. So to put this in perspective here, let me pull up a couple other calculators. A Holy Shock above here we have a Holy Shock Paladin that is investing in resistance gear, okay? And then down here we'll have a Holy Shock Paladin who didn't invest in resistance gear. Instead, they invested in like plus healing gear. Okay, that would be their standing effective HP, and then their heals would probably be somewhere in the vicinity of 35 hundos. Okay, so if I geared up a Holy Shock Paladin on the PTR right now, and I did not have any consideration to duel, and I had no consideration for resistance gear whatsoever. Instead, I'm just going to worship at the altar, plus healing, and having a really thick HP bar, which is the correct way to play a Holy Shock Paladin. That's how you play Holy Shock Paladin on Warmain, where resistance gear doesn't exist, and it ends up being it ends up being the best dueling class in the game, except it can't beat Fire Mages and it can't beat Warlocks because it doesn't have access to resistance gear. That's what this Paladin stats are. They'll have like somewhere between 10,000 to 11,000 HP in phase 1, and their Holy Lights will heal for somewhere in the vicinity of like 3,300 to like 3,500 in phase 1. That's what their stats are. Now, they're going to have noticeably better offensive combat stats because they have a lot more plus healing on their gear, so therefore they have a lot more spell power on their gear. But Holy Shock Paladins actually beat the crap out of people, not so much through spell power and offense as they do through just raw mana efficiency and durability over time. They basically grind their enemies into pulp by being a combination of live lords that just never run out of mana. And the combination of those two, and being in super thick armor. A combination of those in conjunction with Bubble basically mean they kind of beat the shit out of everybody. But anyway, those are the stats if you don't worship at the altar of resistance gear. And then you compare that to, what if I start sacrificing all that plus healing gear for resistance gear? Well, you can see that your effective HP more than fucking doubles. It goes up by like 130%, which means ain't nobody fucking popping your ass anymore. Holy crap. And then on top of this, your effective healing is also increased noticeably more than it is with all that plus healing gear. On top of the only thing you're really missing in this equation at this point is your offensive abilities kind of aren't anywhere near as good, but they're still going to be like 70% as good as this plus healing paladin down here. You're an endurance. You were winning most of your matchups as an endurance fighter with these stats down here as is. If you know how to play Holy Shock Paladin, you're an endurance fighter first, and then your lethality is a distant second consideration. You basically out-survive all enemy nonsense, never run out of mana, and grind your opponents into pulp. Okay, that's how you play Holy Shock Paladin on Warbane, where resistance gear doesn't exist. But if we're talking actual TBC where resistance gear does exist, you basically lean even harder into the endurance fighting aspect of your Holy Shock Paladin. And at that point, you don't really care that you're only doing 70% of the DPS output of a normal Holy Shock Paladin. You are basically swimming in an ocean of mana from your just raw efficiency on your Paladin that suddenly you're just seal twisting all over the place. It's just like, fuck, man. Let me try to get on the PTR, and we can actually talk about the talents of like a Holy Shock Paladin, so we're all on the same fucking page here. Oh. Right, so Elephant in the Room number 1 is resistance gear, and then rogues, and then Holy Shock, and then you're back to rogues again, and it's just like, fuck it off. So if I go to the talents over here, I do believe I do have a Holy Shock Paladin build. So my Argent Defender Paladin build is for the arena. I actually see the stats over here. Holy crap, I'm wearing the wrong gear. I'm in the dueling gear, not in the Argent Defender Paladin. Not in arena gear. Okay, cool. We should have arena gear on now. Yeah. We're closer to... My HP is still incredibly low. Why is it incredibly low? Oh, because I got the 2 rings on. Okay, that makes sense. Let's get back into arena paladin gear. That way nobody's laughing at me. I have multiple 2 rings? What the hell? Where are my dueling rings? Or my arena rings? Where are they at? Okay, there's one of them. Okay, cool. And then here's the other one. Sweet. Everything else should be correct. Oh, we're missing stamina on the neck piece for arena. Okay, cool. I don't want to be standing here making this video selling you guys incorrectly about paladin here. Stamina check. Stamina check. Everything looks fine. Oh, right. We don't have stamina, so I need 4 stamina gems. Okay. Because I was making a video about endurance fighting and telling people, do you want MP5 on your gear for endurance fighting for Paladin, or do you want spirit gear on your gear for Paladin? And it really depends on how disciplined of an actual Paladin you are. Need to make a separate video on endurance fighting Paladin here in a second, but that's why the gear has a bunch of this, whatchamacallits, spirit all over the fucking place. Dude, yeah, I'm talking about how we're going to replace this later with Twin Blade of the Phoenix come phase 2, and that causes your Naru to be loaded up with spirit gems or MP5 gems because it's your endurance fighting go-to. And yeah, I have 20 spirit on the weapon, which isn't supposed to happen, but hey, what are you doing? Come on, let's do this thing. Yeah. I think we're good. Oh, right. And I also changed some of the... No, I didn't change any of the enchants around. Boots? Okay, everything should be fine. Okay, cool. I only take off the food buff. Let me take that off so we can... Yeah, those are the proper arena stats. Unbuffed, 12,437 HP. All right, cool. Don't want to lie to you guys here. Okay, so if we're talking 2's arena, by far the best paladin in the game is Arch Defender, which is what you see right here. Super thick paladin, has Eye for an Eye, has Pursuit of Justice, has 5 out of 5 Argent Defender. This paladin, if I put on Kings, his standing effective HP is like 16,000 effective HP in phase 1. Good fucking luck. He has somewhere between, Argent Defender paladins have somewhere between 1 to 2 points in Holy Shield. This is specifically to combat rogues. If you don't have Argent Defender, you can't beat rogues. If you don't have at least 1 point in Holy Shield, you can't beat a single rogue in PvP. For dueling purposes, the Argent Defender paladin doesn't have 2 points in Eye for an Eye. Instead, they have more points in Holy Shield, at least 1 point in Holy Shield, because the Holy Shield is really what causes you to be able to beat rogues. This is how insane you have to get to beat rogues in TBC, is you got to be a super thick boy, and then you actually have to have Argent Defender, and you have to have a Holy Shield. Rogues are literally not fucking around in TBC. But then you look at, okay, that's cool. Thank you. I have no idea if that's my internet or their internet. But that, my other spec on the PTR is the Holy Shock variant. And the reason why I dual spec'd for Argent Defender Paladin and then Holy Shock Paladin is because the Argent Defender Paladin is for 2's arenas with a rogue. Oh, it's my internet. That's why it's not working. Is for the 2's arena for fighting with rogues, or just any class, really. It's the best arena-built paladin there is. But then Holy Shock is a noticeably better duelist and is a noticeably better open-world paladin build. Like, if you're getting jumped in the open world and you're going to get into a bunch of 1v1 fights, the Holy Shock build is noticeably better. There also aren't that many... the gearing changes to go from Holy Shock to Argent Defender are relatively minimal. So the gear down here is what changes on your Paladin to be a Holy Shock Paladin. So if I switch over to Holy Shock Paladin, I switch these 4 pieces of gear specifically. But everything else stays virtually identical. I need to look at the skills or the talents really fast here. Okay, let's look at the Holy Shock Paladin. Holy Shock? Okay, cool. So the Holy Shock Paladin, why can't I scroll? Like, what the fuck is wrong? Oh, Holy Retribution. Okay, cool. So the Holy Shock duelist version of the Paladin has Holy Shock. This, I guess there's 33 points in the Holy Tree. 2 out of 3 points of Light's Grace. You could put 3 out of 3 here, but it's usually overkill. In the Retribution tree, however, you've put enough points into the Retribution tree to pick up Sanctified Judgments. There's multiple ways to build this Paladin. You can either go for 3 out of 3 Sanctified Judgments, which makes you a mana efficiency monster. This 3 out of 3 Sanctified Judgments, if I recall correctly, is worth something stupid like 210 or 240 MP5 on your Holy Shock Paladin. It is literally insane. And the fact that you have to go through Eye for an Eye to get here, the fact that you have to pick up 3 out of 3 Vindication to get here, which is really good against rogues and a bunch of other classes, and you get Sanctity Aura, everything here is just it's just worth it. It's just worth it to go this deep into the tree. But at a bare minimum, you come into the Ret tree specifically to get Pursuit of Justice, because this is what allows you to be like. It's really hard to beat rogues as a Holy Shock Paladin without Pursuit of Justice. Let's just put it that way. You can do it, but you're looking at like a 60% win rate against rogues without coming deep enough into the tree to get 3 out of 3 Pursuit of Justice on your Holy Shock Paladin. With Pursuit of Justice against rogues, you've got like a 95% win rate. Again, how you heal versus a rogue is you stun the rogue with your Hodge Stun, and then you run away from them in a straight line, putting a Consecration down behind you. You run away long enough and fast enough from the rogue for the poisons to wear off, and then you have enough. Without Pursuit of Justice, you only have enough time to put 1 Holy Light into you and 1 Flash of Light before the rogue is shadow stepping on top of you and you can't heal yourself anymore. With Pursuit of Justice, you have enough time to do 2 Holy Lights and 1 Flash of Light and pretty much heal yourself damn near back to full. That's the primary difference between having Pursuit of Justice in that matchup. And then it's just every other matchup, Pursuit of Justice is still really fucking good, because at any time you can like run away from your enemy. You can like judge justice on them and run away from them. And you can start drinking and doing drink running. And you can play a kiting game if you have to. And it just causes you to like versus hunters and shit. It makes the matchup incredibly fucking easy. So bare minimum, as your Holy Shock Paladin, you come all the way down here and you pick up 3 points in Pursuit of Justice. And then from there, you have to decide, am I putting the more points into the Holy Tree, because we're within spitting distance of Holy Guidance, right? Or am I going down into the Prot Tree, specifically, we're looking for Stoicism, right? Like 2 out of 2 Stoicism is the number 1 thing that we really want in the Prot Tree, and you get within spitting distance of Improved Concentration Aura as well. You basically have to make that decision. At a minimum, you're usually putting 33 points into the Holy Tree. Yeah, so we would, what would there be? There would be 5 points here, 3 points here, so that's 8 points. You'd be missing another 5 points from this tree, so that would be 13 points. And then you'd be missing 2 points over here, so you're looking at 15 points, right? So you'd have 15 additional points to put into the Prot tree, and that would get you this deep. And then we start having to ask ourselves questions like, do I sacrifice the 2 points over here in Light's Grace for Stoicism? Or do I keep the 2 points in Light's Grace for, you know, a better healing? If you have access to resistance gear, 100% the Stoicism is going to be better. If you do not have access to resistance gear, so you're basically forced to stand. You're basically forced to try to cast Holy Lights to out-heal the incoming DPS from Elemental Shamans, the incoming DPS from Frost Mages, the incoming DPS from Fire Mages when they're trying to kill you, the incoming DPS from Warlocks. If you can't just laugh that off with resistance gear, you have to have Light's Grace, 2 out of 3 minimum. But if you do have access to the resistance gear, Stoicism is probably going to move the needle for you more than the reduced casting time on your Holy Lights. But you're not going to want to part with 3 points in Pursuit of Justice under just about any circumstances. Your Judgment is a massive component to your DPS. And so going into the ret tree for no other reason than to pick up the reduced cooldown of your judgment time, going from 10 seconds to 8 seconds is worth its weight in gold. How you kill people as a Holy Shock Paladin is you literally heal, 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 even Holy Shock healing yourself, because when it crits, not only do you get the 4-set bonus from the gear, the 4-set bonus basically increases its healing by 30%. But when it crits, you get all the mana refunded back to you. It's usually almost always better to use Holy Shock defensively on yourself than it is to use offensively on your enemy. The only exception I can think of is when you're trying to kill a hunter and you've already the hunter. They can be really hard to put down without using Holy Shock offensively. But if you are using it offensively, you just kill them. But basically, you just stand there and heal yourself, and every time Judgment is on cooldown, you basically judge damage into the enemy. You get your auto attacks off when they interrupt you, so usually you have 5 out of 5 Vengeance on your opponent, and you basically just judge them to death while spam healing yourself. But you want to use Holy Shock defensively because it becomes incredibly mana efficient, and then you gear in such a way so that you're basically worship at the altar of MP5, typically, so you're this endurance fighting monstrosity. And the whole reason why you'd even go deep enough into the ret tree to get the Sanctified Judgments is because it's basically worth like 240 MP5 on your Paladin, because you're basically judging on cooldown as your primary source of damage. But yeah, you're just a live lord little piece of shit that is more mana efficient than any other thing in the entire fucking game, especially since you can like judge wisdom on people. That's the other elephant in the room with the when it comes to dueling with the Pursuit of Justice. Like, why we bother to pick up Pursuit of Justice on both Argent Defender and Holy Shock Paladin is because the Pursuit of Justice makes it so that we don't have to judge justice on our enemies all the time. We don't have to do that trade-off between, do I judge justice on him or do I judge wisdom on him, or Judgment of the Crusader or Judgment of Light, right? I have increased movement speed over my enemy at all times, therefore I can afford to judge wisdom on this motherfucker, therefore I can afford to be more mana efficient, therefore. That's what ends up causing you to win mana wars, even if you don't have Sanctified Judgment, is the increased movement speed means you don't have to judge justice on your enemy to stay in melee contact with them. You can instead judge wisdom on them and just suck up a bunch of mana and win a fucking mana war. Right, so, elephant in the room, having a $200,000 grand prize is going to cause a political fucking nightmare. You're going to see all manner of gatekeeping and shenanigans behind the scene, which is going to piss off just about anyone who actually knows about TBC dueling. Then if you actually want to make TBC dueling interesting, you both have to limit resist gear, but not too limited, that the like 150 spell penetration that people can get very easily and very cheaply in TBC. And if we're also allowing Eye of Moab, then we're talking like, 250 spell penetration. You have to try to keep the spell penetration in check, or that's going to like make things like super out of whack. If I had to take a guess, you could limit resistance gear to, you're only allowed to have like 200 resistance gear on your character. At that point, at best, it'd be like Paladin and Shaman can get up to like, 270 resistance with their aura, like, 270. And then our enemies might be kicking around with like 150 penetration. If I divide this by like, 22 equals, multiply that by 5 because it's 5%. A 27% resistance is still totally worth it for a lot of classes, but at the same time is not overwhelming to the point where it becomes mathematically uninteresting to watch that duel, if that makes any sense. If we're allowing people to run around like a 50% resistance damage reduction, mathematically speaking, the duels will be uninteresting. But once you are down around the 30% resistance level, like, somewhere around there, RNG can kind of go either way, especially in longer fights, and resistance gearing does cause the fights to go longer. So we have to keep the resistance gear in check. I would suggest making a rule so that it's like your character, with all of its abilities active, okay, cannot go above 300 resistance. Okay, 300 resistance is the maximum amount of resistance you're allowed to have in the duel, period. So what does that mean? That means if I'm a warlock who, no, warlocks I think can summon a pet that their fell hunter gives them resistances or some shit like that. Okay, let's think about rogue or warrior. So theoretically, you could be a warrior or a rogue running around with 300 resistance gear. I could be a paladin running around with 300 resistance gear, but my gear would only be allowed to have, I'd have like 230 resistance on my gear, and then my aura would pump that up by 70, so I hit the breakpoint of only being allowed 300 resistance on the gear. If I reduce that again by like the 150 that I'm like thinking people are going to be able to have, I divide that by 22 equals, multiply that by 5. We're looking at, yeah, that 33%. 33% damage reduction is both a resistance number that's worth it to see in Arena, but at the same time is not mathematically insanely oppressive all at the same time. So that would be my suggestion. Right. So what's the takeaway here? If you lower resistance gear in duels, and also that 150 maximum resistance gear is still within striking distance of Eye of Moab, right? So Eye of Moab is a trinket. You get an AQ20 incredibly fucking easily, and when you pop the thing, it's like for the next, I forget, it's like 30 seconds or something, or 20 seconds. Reduces, basically gives you like 100 spell pen for like the next 30 seconds. If they haven't changed that in TBC, and they didn't change Scarab Brooch, right, which gives you 100 to all resistances for 1 minute, there's some interesting play around. Like, the resistance isn't so fucking high that I don't care if you have Eye of Moab or not, if that makes any sense. So anyways, if they don't keep resistance gear in check, any Holy Shock Paladin is basically going to win. A bunch of the matchups are going to be incredibly fucking boring, because it's going to be like, yeah, that warrior has 400 shadow resist, and he's beating the shit out of a warlock because now they can. And you're like, what? And the answer is like, yes. Or that druid is like completely shitting on every other class in the game except for, like, they're beating fire mages easily. They're beating frost mages easily. They're beating warlocks easily. They're beating elemental shamans easily. Because they're just in like a super, they can heal themselves with a super thick resistance suit. It makes the duels mathematically uninteresting to watch. However, if you completely eliminate resistance gear from the equation, rogues win. Rogues win. If you allow resistance gear to be like, whatever, do whatever you want with resistance gear, the Holy Shock Paladins are going to take a tournament like that. So my suggestion would be limit resist gear to 300. Like, maximum. Like, no matter what you do on your character resistance gear-wise, it cannot go above 300 resistance. I would allow Eye of Moab. I would allow, a Scarab Brooch, but you can't go above 300 resistance at any point during the duel, by your own will and by your own admission, in case there's like some ability that's like, haha, I cast it on my enemy, like literally, like, I buffed my enemy, he went over 300 resistance, disqualify him. No, you're being stupid. From there, you have to find a way to nerf rogues. Let me think about that. I don't know if you can. I'm like, what might be interesting to do in the tournament is no Shadow Step. Like, just do not allow the rogues to have Shadow Step. and then problem solved. I would be fascinated to see TBC duels where rogues are not allowed to use Shadow Step. In the video, Soda Poppin says that Cloak of Shadows is the real elephant in the room. I think it's Shadow Step, to be perfectly honest with you, because Shadow Step is the one thing that doesn't let classes kite rogues anymore like they can in classic World of Warcraft. And the interesting thing about Rogue is it's not like the build without Shadow Step is interesting. So, for example, I'm planning on playing Paladin Rogue, like Argent Defender Paladin Rogue in the arena. And I've looked at Rogue enough to know exactly what the fuck Shadow Step is coming, is opportunity accosted against. And there are some really fucking scary talents that are being sacrificed in exchange for Shadow Step in TBC. Specifically, increased likelihood to proc their poisons on their target, and more importantly, making it harder for your enemies to dispel poisons off of them. So on top of, like, I think it's Cold Blood and a bunch of other absolutely disgusting things that are opportunity costed against in the rogue tree. So if you literally just tell the rogues you're not allowed to have Shadow Step, that will change the dueling meta dramatically. But at the same time, the rogues still get access to some really fucking scary talents in there. I do believe it's in the assassination tree, if I recall correctly. So I don't think Cloak of Shadows is the elephant in the room. I think Shadow fucking Step is the elephant in the room from a interesting to watch duels perspective, right? So if all we care about is putting on a good show, we have to limit the resistances. Otherwise, it's not going to be interesting to watch whatsoever. We need to nerf the rogues somehow, or it's not going to be interesting to watch whatsoever. And if we're talking if all we want is to see rogues lose, take away Cloak of Shadows from them. Like, easy peasy. But if we want to see fun and interesting duels between rogues and other classes, don't allow them to have Shadow Step. That will put the rogues basically back into what it's like for them to duel in classic World of Warcraft, where they have to kill their enemies and use their CDs to kill their enemies, and their enemy is trying to outlive them. Because if they can outlive them with like 5% life and start kiting them, the rogues are now kiteable in TBC without Shadow Step the way they're kiteable in classic World of Warcraft, where they also don't have Shadow Step. Those would be much more interesting duels to watch, on top of the fact that it's probably the nerf that rogues need. Unironically, you might have to ban Holy Shock Paladins. It would be far more interesting for us to watch Argent Defender Paladins trying to fight their way to the top. Holy Shock Paladins are going to be they're brain dead to win. You think rogues, it's easy to beat every class in the game with a rogue with one hand tied behind your back? Holy fuck. Go play a Holy Shock Paladin and know anything about Holy Shock Paladin. You're like, oh, is that class over there? Let me just put on some resist gear. Oh, is it a fucking rogue? Let me run away from him in a straight line with my plus 15% movement speed over him and put consecration down and just heal, and he can't do any fucking thing about it. God damn. You want to see some boring, brain dead, nonsensory, you literally might have to ban Holy Shocks from the game. I don't even know how to balance that, to be perfectly honest with you. I do know that Argent Defender Paladin is the second best dueling class in the entire game. Like, literally, as far as dueling goes, it's Holy Shock Paladin number 1, Argent Defender Paladin number 2, and then Rogues. Okay? If we're talking about unrestricted gear, those are your top dueling classes in the fucking game. The Holy Shock Paladin has, like, their lowest win rate matchup in unrestricted dueling context is versus rogues, and even then they have an 85% win rate. Against any other class in the game, if they're allowed to have a resistance gear on to their heart's content, they're just going to laugh and kill everything. They're going to have like a 90, 95% win rate against anything. You want to see boring, there's fucking boring. The second best dueling class in the game is Argent Defender Paladin, but Argent Defender Paladin has to fucking work for it. Argent Defender Paladin has 70% or better win rates against just about every other class in the game, but there are a lot of classes in the game where Argent Defender Paladin, like RNG, can go one way or the other and pop them. So it's not like Holy Shock Paladin where their worst win rate is 85% against Rogue, and then they have like 95% win rate against everything else. And Argent Defender Paladin has multiple matchups where it's a 70% or slightly lower win rate, assuming we're talking about and they have to work really, really hard in their gearing and know their Paladin. There's a lot of skill involved with playing an Argent Defender Paladin properly compared to the brain-dead Holy Shock Paladin. Then lastly, of course, you have Rogues. Rogues will shit on everything except Argent Defender Paladins and Holy Shock. So anyways, I'm going to end the video here. Let me play that No God No meme again. Let him say it.
First thing I did, I went and messaged.
No. Talk about the grand prize like a
it.
moron.
And first thing I did, and it'll have like first place prize could be
Yeah.
like,
Yeah,
it could be
say
upwards of $250,000.
Yeah, fuck you. Nope, this is me.
No, God!
No.
No, God, please, no! 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 No!
All right, cool.
No!
Anyways, on the video here, already long as fuck, day as fault.